Lina Marciano was born on the 25th of January 1959 to parents Maria and Giovanni Marciano, and was described as a vibrant, energetic and caring teen who always stood up for what she believed in. She wasn't ever afraid to say what she thought. Her sister, Teresa Kellett, described her as a gentle soul with a very strong sense of social justice. Lina was a student teacher who loved music and enjoyed riding her motorbike in her spare time. On the 1st of March 1978, at approximately 6:40 p.m, 19-year-old Lina Marciano mounted her blue and white Honda motorcycle parked outside of her home in Wayville, Adelaide, South Australia, before riding 10 kilometres towards Nailsworth Primary School, where she was going to attend a Greek dance class in one of the demountable classrooms. Only she never arrived. Her motorcycle was later found parked in the KFC parking lot opposite the primary school, which indicated that Lina had arrived at the location, but for unknown reasons, she didn't attend the class. This was only her second lesson, so why would she have arrived there and not entered the school? Lina did not return home to the apartment she shared with her sister, Teresa, and as the hours ticked by, her family became increasingly concerned for her welfare. As a result, they reported the 19-year-old as a missing person, and searches for her began. 4 days following her out-of-character disappearance on the 4th of March, the Marciano family received the devastating news that Lina's body had been found at around 9:30 a.m. in the Roy Amer rubbish tip, 8 kilometres away in Dry Creek. She had been bound, gagged and wrapped in brown curtain. She had been strangled with a hot track road racing set cord and had suffered multiple blunt force traumas to her head, given with such force that some of Lina's teeth had been knocked out, though the missing teeth were never found. Even more shockingly, Lina had also been stabbed in the heart and had suffered several broken fingers. The sheer brutality of the injuries inflicted on her was shocking for Adelaide authorities, calling it a frenzied attack, where both the blunt force trauma to the head and the stab wounds were indeed fatal. Authorities even cited overkill, and whoever dumped Lina's body, quote, like trash, had complete disregard for her. Whether the attack was personal or random remains unclear, though the perpetrator was clearly enraged. The three main hypotheses are that Lina was attacked or abducted from the car park by a stranger, that she was lured away by someone she knew and trusted, or that she was murdered within one of the classrooms before being taken to the rubbish tip. Whilst scouring the dump for further clues, investigators discovered 2 more curtains of the same fabric and design in close proximity to Lina's body. They believed the curtains were manufactured in either West Germany or Belgium, and they contained bloodstains and various fibres. Police could not say with absolute certainty whether Lina had met her demise within close proximity to the school or somewhere near to the rubbish tip. Rather interestingly to note, Lina's motorcycle helmet has never been recovered. As the months rolled by, clues in this case were scarce, and authorities had very little to work with in regards to catching Lina's killer. An identikit was used to create an e-fit of the suspect, and police hoped that the reconstruction would lead to significant tips or leads that could be followed up on, but unfortunately this proved to be far more difficult than expected. A cleaner who worked at the primary school where Lina was due to attend dance class that night came forward to the police in the early 1990s. She had a significant link to a man who was considered a suspect in the case, and this woman gave police information which allegedly implicated him. However, the information she gave them, according to them, was not significant enough to pursue further inquiries. Shockingly, it's alleged that the woman in question was assaulted a number of times following her visit to the police and was told by the assailant to, quote, keep her mouth shut. He also has never been identified. In 2005, when Lina's case was reopened, authorities excavated an area of ground by Waldorf School, where the old Nailsworth demountable classroom had been moved to. The old timber frame and floors were taken and used for new projects in 2002, though investigators hoped to find Lina's teeth possibly under old floorboards. But once again, their efforts proved to be fruitless, and the case once again hit a dead end. The motive for this crime remains unknown, though it had been theorised that due to the fact that Lina was gagged and bound, sexual assault may have been intended, though Lina's post-mortem revealed no sexual assault had occurred. Whilst investigating Lina's death, police found several links to 7 other young women between the ages of 15 and 26 who had disappeared from Adelaide the year prior to Lina's murder in 1977, all within a 52-day period. Was it possible that they were all, including Lina, victims of a serial killer? On April 25th of 1978, a couple found the decomposed remains of an 18-year-old woman, Veronica Knight, in remote bushland beside Swamp Road near to the town of Truro, 80 kilometres northeast of Adelaide. Bloodstained clothes and more bones being found nearby. A year later, in April 1979, the remains of 16-year-old Sylvia Pittman were found less than a kilometre away from where Veronica's remains had been found the previous year. Both women had mysteriously disappeared around Christmas of 1978, and due to the fact that they had also been found within close proximity of one another, police suspected that Knight and Pittman had fallen victim to the same perpetrator. 5 other young women who had disappeared from Adelaide within the same time span were also believed to have been victim to the same perpetrator, so authorities tried to conclusively link them together. Suspicious that the area may have been a serial killer's burial ground, a search was conducted in the vicinity, and 11 days later, investigators recovered 2 further sets of skeletal remains in a paddock opposite Swamp Road, belonging to Connie Urdenides, or Connie Jordan, aged 16, and Vicky Howell, aged 26, who were 2 of the 5 missing women from Adelaide. A 38-year-old man named James William Miller was eventually tried and convicted of killing 6 of the women who had disappeared from Adelaide after a car accident killed his lover and accomplice, 23-year-old Christopher Robin Worrell, in February of 1977, and this ultimately ended their reign of terror. It came to light that Miller and Worrell had met in prison and even shared a cell. Miller was serving time for breaking and entering, whereas Worrell was incarcerated for rape and breach of a 2-year suspended sentence for armed robbery. Around the time both men were released, the disappearances and their murder spree began. The pair prowled the streets of Adelaide, looking for women for Worrell to have sex with in the car, whilst Miller went for long walks. The women, more often than not, were looking for a ride from the street or public transport links, intending to travel back to their homes. When the women were approached and rejected his advances, Christopher would often take them to a secluded area, tie them up, and sexually assault them. And as time progressed, the rapes would turn into murders. The violence inflicted against these women seemed to become even more twisted and disturbing as the weeks went by, so much so that Miller allegedly became scared of Worrell's actions, Worrell becoming more and more violent and threatened to hurt Miller several times if he did not help him. As more women died, Miller helped Worrell dispose of the bodies in secluded locations, without a second thought. The break in the so-called Truro murders case came at Worrell's funeral, when his former girlfriend told Miller that Christopher had a blood clot on his brain, which then led Miller to tell her about his fascination with thrill killing, and how the blood clot could have been the reason behind it. After this confession, Worrell's former girlfriend contacted authorities in May of 1979 after reading about the Truro murders in the newspapers and becoming suspicious of Worrell and Miller's involvement. Miller was brought in for questioning shortly afterwards, and he confessed that Worrell had killed 3 other women and buried their remains in Port Gawler and in a dump in Wingfield. They were identified as 15-year-old Tanya Kenny, 16-year-old Juliet Makita, and 20-year-old Deborah Lamb. All of the victims had been strangled, other than Lamb, who appeared to have been buried alive on a beach. Despite allegedly never having touched the victims, Miller was sentenced to 6 consecutive life sentences for the murders of Pittman, Jordan, Howell, Kenny, Makita, and Lamb. He was not convicted for Knight's murder due to the fact that following his return from his usual walk, he and Worrell had a heated confrontation, which ended in Worrell pulling out a knife and threatening Miller with his own life. Some argue, however, that Miller's murder convictions should have been culpable homicide, as he did not directly take the lives of these women, and only partook in helping bury the bodies after Worrell had killed them. However, Miller was found to be part of a joint criminal enterprise with Worrell in this case. An appeal was launched for a retrial, however, the request was denied. Miller applied for a non-parole period after a change in Australian criminal law, and it was granted 35 years, meaning that he was eligible for parole in 2014, but Miller died in October of 2008 following liver failure as a result of complications relating to hepatitis C. It's a brutal and heartbreaking irony for the Marcianos, knowing that Lina's murder was paramount in catching the Truro murderers, and yet her own killer has never been brought to justice. Christopher Worrell was already dead by 1978, meaning that Lina could not have been a victim of the Truro murders. The prime suspect, who has never publicly been identified, has never been charged in relation to Lina's murder, as there is not enough evidence to do so. The man in question, who is now elderly, has been interviewed a number of times over the years and even provided a DNA sample. But unfortunately, despite a reappeal to the public for information in 2020, Lina's case remains unsolved. Authorities are hoping that advances in DNA technology will finally help bring some closure for the Marciano family and hopefully bring Lina's killer to justice. According to Crime Stoppers Australia, there is currently a $200,000 reward for any information which could lead to helping positively identify and convict Lina's killer. In regards to her sister's brutal murder, Teresa told news.com.au, quote, "Unfortunately, her life ended with no justice being served for a life that was brutally taken away from her. You could not be treated more unfairly than she was, for no reason at all. The police have tried very hard, and I can't thank them enough, and I hope they don't give up on her case. She was a fighter, so my family and I will keep hoping that one day soon the killer will come forward. We've missed her so much. Lina's parents, Maria and Giovanni, have both since passed away without knowing who killed their daughter or why, though her remaining family hope that someday they will find closure and, most importantly, get justice for Lina.